Good morning and welcome to Bongino Report. Early edition, a leftist judge wins the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. GOP infighting halts the MAGA agenda for at least a week. Cory Booker talks for 24 hours on the Senate floor and accomplishes absolutely nothing. A guest on The View doesn't know that the Constitution is the law of the land. A fired Fed harasses Senator Banks and it gets epically roasted by him. The FBI is exposed for gagging agents on the Hunter Biden laptop story. Texans protest an Islamic mega project being installed in the state. Estonia bans Russian ethnics from voting in their elections and not backing Ukraine. And France blames the U.S. for an anti-French meme trend that we Americans did not start. All this on Bongino Report, early edition. A leftist Dane County Circuit Court Judge, Susan Crawford, beat Waukesha County Circuit Court Judge Brad Schimmel in yesterday's Wisconsin Supreme Court election. Now, a lot of effort has been put into this race. We covered it on the show. My dad and Elon Musk my dad is Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary. He and Elon Musk held a rally in Wisconsin before this election took place. There was so much energy and money put into this election. We had Scott Presler orchestrating a massive door-knocking campaign. There was $100 million put into this race because this was, again, a very consequential election, not just pivotal for the state of Wisconsin, for the balance of power in Wisconsin on the court, but also the balance of power in the entire country. Now that Susan has won, the congressional map is going to be redistricted in the state of Wisconsin to limit Republicans in the House. Democrats literally campaigned on electing Susan to rig congressional seats against Republicans. That was the whole sell. Get out the vote so that we can rig the congressional map against Republicans. Hakeem Jeffries said this explicitly. We played the video earlier last week. So this is a massive blow to the Trump mandate. We will likely lose seats in Wisconsin. But it's not just redistricting, because yesterday Wisconsinites also approved a constitutional amendment. It's known as Wisconsin Question 1, which would enshrine voter ID requirement in the state's constitution. And the amendment passed with an incredible 20% margin. Just like everybody's in agreement of this, as we should be. And this is just common sense. Why would we open ourselves up to voter fraud? Why wouldn't we want to secure our elections that ensure only eligible Americans vote? It's just again, common sense. Millions of Wisconsinites are in agreement on this, as well as millions of Americans just across the country. But what's interesting is that Wisconsin already has a voter ID law on the books. Not enshrined in the Constitution, as this amendment has just done, but we already had voter ID law. And this amendment is basically just a preemptive to protect the state from Susan. That's why they did this. Because Susan was one of the attorneys who challenged Wisconsin's OG voter ID law back in 2011. And she argued that it was unconstitutional. And even after the law was upheld, she continued to push for weakening it, especially suggesting that voters should be allowed to cast ballots by simply signing affidavits instead of presenting valid ID. So this would have effectively just gutted the law, because anybody could just bypass the ID requirement. And the leftist Wisconsin Supreme Court has already reversed its own recent rulings on ballot drop boxes. So we're in a very concerning situation with the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Susan has already said voter ID is unconstitutional. If a challenge is brought to her on this amendment that was just passed, she's going to say that the amendment is unconstitutional and invalidate it. And the other lib justices on the court are going to join her. This is just what's going to happen. This is a woman who has no issue legislating from the bench rather than respecting the will of nearly 6 million Wisconsinites who voted for, again, voter ID to be enshrined in the Constitution. It's very, very bad news for Wisconsin. It's very, very bad news for the state. And a lot of people will ask, what's happening in Wisconsin, right? They vote for voter ID to be enshrined in the Constitution, and they also vote for Susan Crawford, who is somebody who says that voter ID is unconstitutional. And this happens a lot in Wisconsin. I say we because I used to live there. I lived there almost my whole life. This is the first time
we still are Wisconsiners.
Say that again, Mikey.
We still are Wisconsiners.
I do. I say that. I'm still a Wisconsinite. Florida? What do you mean I don't live in Florida. I mean, I do live in Florida, but am I from here? The answer to that is no. Do I feel like a Floridian? The answer is no. And Wisconsin is a very interesting state. Wisconsin is a state that it goes 50-50. It's a purple area, and there are people who will, on the ballot, they'll vote for, President Trump, and they'll also vote for Tammy Baldwin. This is just what they do. And so especially if you look at the map, I don't know if we could pull that up, Mikey, the election results. If you look at the map, farm country, let's pull up the map also for the election for the Supreme Court, if we could, Mikey. Because if you look at these maps, farm country, mostly the middle rural part of the state is obviously very red. And these are people who probably used to vote Democrat, especially if you look at the Marathon County where I used to live. They voted for Obama twice. They switched to Trump because his working class messaging really resonated with them. These are working class, middle class individuals in the state with generally traditional values, and they've fully bought into MAGA. Then you have Milwaukee and Madison in the southern part of the state. They're insane. And a problem with Dane County, which is where Susan Crawford is from, it has the capital, Madison, and also UW-Madison, the school. So you have all these young college students who are not from Wisconsin who vote in elections in the state when they're here and not on summer break. So they also taint the state in a lot of ways. And then you have the northern part of the state. If you look, there's those 3 counties in the top left-hand corner that also go blue. This happens because there's still a deep history of unions in Wisconsin. There's sort of a working class union history, progressive history that we have. And so there are still places, especially up in the north, that still vote that way. And I think it's going to change as the Democrats continue to abandon working class Americans and just become the party of transgenderism and just DEI and insane social policies. But Wisconsin is a very purple state. It remains one. Trump won. Trump is winning over these people, but that doesn't mean that this election the state is secured and red in any way whatsoever. It has a Democrat governor. So there's going to need to be a lot more effort to win over the state, to really message in this state, and to I think tell people, you might have voted for years for Democrats. You might think that these progressives are on your side and that they care about the working class, and they don't. And we have to explain to them that the Democratic Party of 50 years ago is not the Democratic Party of today. This needs to be a serious messaging campaign in a state that I do believe we can win, but remains very, very purple. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about something that is not helping at all the Trump agenda, as we've just now experienced this massive blow in the state of Wisconsin. Don't go anywhere. Flash news. We're in crunch time right now. We're in crunch time right now before these midterms to get as much done as possible while we have a majority in Congress, while we have the executive branch. And for some reason, Republican members of Congress are forcing Mike Johnson to cancel all remaining voting for the week. Yep. Yeah, why would that be happening? Well, yesterday, the House was set to vote on a routine procedural vote, a rule vote. Now, what is a rule vote? Michael asked me this morning. A rule vote is a procedural step in the House that determines whether and how a bill will be debated on the floor. And this rule vote would have allowed the debate on 2 Trump-backed bills. One limiting nationwide injunctions from district judges, very relevant as Trump is dealing with this cohort of activist judges that are trying to prevent him from being the president, from just doing his job. And then the other bill is, of course, the SAVE Act, which of course would require proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections. Now, in this rule package, GOP leadership inserted language that would have effectively blocked Representative Anna Paulina Luna's discharge petition from advancing to a floor vote. What is a discharge petition? This petition is aimed at allowing new parents to vote remotely. So the House yesterday erupted into chaos after 9 Republicans joined Democrats to tank this key rule vote, forcing Speaker Mike Johnson to cancel all floor action for the week. Essentially, we had mutiny among Republicans yesterday in a time where we cannot afford to be having this kind of infighting, especially over something Republicans should not be wanting on the House floor at all in the first place. So let's get into the arguments here. Why shouldn't parents be allowed to vote remotely when they just have a newborn baby? So Democrat Representative Brittany Pedersen wrote this on X. She's obviously in favor of allowing new parents to vote remotely in Congress. She said, "Today, my son Sam and I showed Speaker Mike Johnson, you don't mess with moms. This is a major step forward in our fight to remove barriers that make it difficult for new parents to serve in Congress." Here she is on the House floor explaining more. Take a listen.
And Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this rule, which restricts moms and dads from doing their jobs after welcoming a new child. Like so many of our colleagues, it's one of my greatest honors to be a mom. I have 2 little boys, a son named Davis, who's 5, and my little guy here, Sam, who's now 9 weeks old. It's also one of my greatest honors to have been elected by my constituents to represent them in Congress. And I can tell you, after being a mom here and being only the 13th member to have ever given birth while serving in Congress, voting member, I can tell you we have a long ways to go to make this place accessible for young families like mine. It is unfathomable that in 2025, we have not modernized Congress to address these very unique challenges that members face. It is anti-woman, it's anti-family, and we need to come together to make sure that we kill this rule and have the opportunity to pass this resolution to make sure that new parents have the ability to continue to represent their constituents.
So you heard her. It's anti-woman, it's anti-family. So why would Republicans who are pro-woman, pro-family, why would Republicans like Mike Johnson oppose a bill that is so anti-woman, anti-family, anti-child? Why do members of Congress have to vote in person? There was not remote learning during COVID, by the way. Everybody had to come in person, no remote voting. There were no rule changes. If you're a representative and you have an accident, say you get diagnosed with brain cancer, you're on your deathbed, and you have to go through chemo, and you can't be in the halls of Congress. You don't get to vote remotely from your hospital bed. You need a special election to replace you, and you don't get to vote until that replacement is actually elected, and then the replacement will vote in your place. Constituents simply do not have a voice until someone is in the halls of Congress actually casting votes on their behalf. And the reason, I think, and actually a better question, not just why do we do that, but why did the founders insist that we have voting in person? Because the quorum clause in Article 1, Section 5 of the U.S. Constitution states that a majority of each house shall constitute a quorum to do business. And this means, and this has been interpreted to mean physical presence in Congress, required to establish a quorum and conduct votes. So Anna Paulina Luna is asking for Congress, and the Democrats, asking for Congress to violate, arguably, the Constitution to accommodate her. So why shouldn't we accommodate her? Remote voting erodes the core principles of accountability, deliberation, and transparency that the founders mandated we have in Congress. Lawmakers are elected to show up, to debate, and face their colleagues and constituents, not to cast votes from a screen. Remote voting opens the door for massive security breaches. It weakens the seriousness of the legislative process, and it undermines the public's trust, because I could be casting a vote and my major donors are in the room with me. That there's something very inappropriate about that. You open yourself up to real conflict of interest and potential fraud and so many other problems. We need presence in Congress. Here's Representative Brandon Gill.
And it will be flipped against Republicans, meaning you can vote from home, you can vote from the beach, you can vote from your fundraiser's office, you can vote from wherever. And remember, this doesn't just apply to pregnant women who just had kids, it applies to men as well for 12 weeks. I think that is a bad idea. I think this is a bad idea on the merits But I certainly don't agree with issuing a discharge petition right now whenever Republicans should be focused on codifying President Trump's executive orders into law, to backing up the president and doing all the things that we told the American people we were going to do. I don't think that most Americans want their Congress members voting from home. Our constituents have to show up to work, and we should too.
No, I'm all for moms who are superstars. My mom is a major morning news host. She's the face of Fox Noticias. She's giving speeches and she's staying up on the news, and she's a working woman, and she's influencing the culture, and she also has 9 children. It's amazing, and I admire her. And for as demanding as her role is, it isn't a role that requires her to be in another state every other week and take votes at all hours of the day and sometimes night. It's not her job. And she would never have, I don't think, picked that job unless her children are out of the house. There's a coalition of women who are in the House of Representatives who don't have small young children who do incredible jobs. And I'm not saying if you have a young child, you can't serve in Congress, but there is an expectation that you come and you vote in person. And we're not going to accommodate you because you have a little baby. I'm sorry. That's just, then don't sign up, then quit. Then have somebody replace you. Then don't do this job if you cannot meet the requirements of this job. If you can't juggle being a mom and a member of Congress, then stop being a member of Congress. Sorry, just stop. There is a reason we have this rule, and it's not to be mean to women, to be mean to moms. Proxy voting will be abused and expanded. We all know it. There is no excuse for if you are a working mother or if you have brain cancer. I'm sorry. And again, if you can't fulfill the requirements of the job that you beg the voters to give you, then you need to resign and let somebody else vote in your place. Have a special election and get the hell out of there. You don't get to uproot the
Also, fun
intentions.
fact, this is how they used to get to Congress.
Yes, it was a serious, people would travel for weeks to get to Congress in the early days of the founding, and it would be sweltering hot, and you're there, and it's just, I mean, it was away from your family, and they had to be there in person. Now, I mean, you hop on a plane, you're there in less than a day, to get there in a couple hours. You can go to and from your district very seamlessly because of transportation and the way that technology has advanced in the years. I mean, it's possible to be a young mother and a member of Congress. Frankly, it's more possible to be a young member of Congress who has small children than it is many other jobs out there. But again, you don't get to uproot the intentions of the Founding Fathers because the schedule is inconvenient for you. That's just absurd. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, by the way, is one of these women I talked about who has, her babies are grown up. Now she's in Congress, she's focused on this, and she was not a member when she wanted to devote herself fully to her children.
In the same way that soldiers go off and they're deployed overseas, they come home and actually meet their babies for the first time, and their babies are several months old. Members of Congress don't have to be here. They don't have to be here. Being a member of Congress is a privilege. You're serving your district. There's lots of seasons of life. I'm a mother. I've raised 3 children. And when my children were babies and were young, I prioritized them in that season of life. Now I serve in Congress because I'm not raising children. And I think that's a really important point to make. And if any member of Congress, for any reason whatsoever, finds them in a situation where they're not able to do the job here, the important job we're elected to do, they should step down because someone else can serve in their place. They're not required to be here. They're not more important than anyone. They're not more important than people in their district. And they shouldn't go across the aisle and work with Democrats while Democrats use a baby propped up around the floor trying to prove their point. But instead, they're holding a baby proving the point you can be a mother and serve in Congress. So I think today, I think this is unfortunate, and it's distracting, and it's off message, and it's not the agenda. It's not serving the American people.
Somebody brought up an amazing point that I did not even think about, but is such a great point. Somebody said, your dad resigned for family. Yeah, that did happen. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, so my dad obviously was in Congress. He was representative for Wisconsin's 7th District. My mom got pregnant with my younger sibling, the 9th child in our family. She has special needs, and she also at that time had a heart condition. She was born with 2 holes in her heart. And it became just a really untenable situation. I mean, Congress is a demanding job. You're gone for half the time in D.C. And for my mom, it was difficult to have 9 children. And then you have this new one on the way who has this massive heart condition. There were so many unknowns. It was very stressful for our family. And my dad said, okay, I can't vote remotely. I can't just, because it's really tough here and I'm a dad and I have this newborn baby who's coming, who I need to be here for my wife. I have to resign. We had a little newborn baby on the way, and my dad resigned, because that's what you do when you can't fulfill the role that you signed up for. You step aside, you let somebody else take your place. And you're right, it's not serving the American people. This is not something the American people care about right now. They just don't. I don't care that the job that you signed up for is inconvenient to you because you got pregnant. What I care about right now is that rogue activist judges are trying to curtail the rightful powers of the executive branch. And we now have another week of weaponization from this administration. And by the way, just this morning, the DNC, Chuck Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries filed a lawsuit against President Trump to stop his executive order, which prohibits non-citizens from voting. We need the SAVE Act. An executive order is not good enough. It's not good enough long-term. It's not even good enough short-term. We need this act. And we just curtailed a week of voting, a week of enacting the Trump agenda because some random women and Democrats in Congress saying they can't vote in person because they decided to get pregnant and they can't fulfill the duties of the job that they signed up for. I'm sorry, this is just a dumb excuse, and I don't care about it. I don't care. I care about the country. I care about the Trump agenda. I care about actually getting the job done that we sent our members of Congress to get done. I didn't send you to Congress to carve out special little privileges for you because you got pregnant. Democrats want illegals voting in the midterms. They do. We need the SAVE Act so badly. Right? We need to curtail these activist judges right now. Republican members of Congress prevented us from doing the job that needs to get done this week. And Sean Davis brought up a really fascinating point here, CEO of The Federalist. And this is a tweet directed at Anna Paulina Luna. He wrote this: "It seems wildly short-sighted to ask for the right to give your vote away to someone hundreds or thousands of miles away while at the same time calling for voter ID and in-person voting, both of which are essential to election integrity. Your demand for the former perils the likelihood of the latter, which are far more important to the long-term health of the Republic than proxy voting for politicians who don't want to show up to work." And of course, it's such a great point. It's so hypocritical. We're going to say we need to have voter ID and voting in person. None of this mass mail-in voting that we had during COVID that totally opened ourselves up to massive insecurity. And now Republicans are like, yeah, and we're in Congress and we're going to want to vote remotely. It's so hypocritical. Also, back in January, Trump sent out a memorandum requiring all federal workers to work in person or get fired. And many of them did get fired. And Republicans applauded. But now we need remote work for members of Congress. There's no remote work for the other federal workers in the executive. And by the way, here's the real kicker. Somebody brought this up in the chat. And I validated this too because I saw it on X. This is the real kicker. Congress operates its own child care facilities for congressional staff members. They literally have taxpayer-funded child care, and they're still demanding that they have the right to not vote in person whenever it's inconvenient for them. Very few jobs offer free child care. Very few, but Congress apparently does. This is just absurd. Also, this is the other thing that's interesting. Do you see how Pedersen brought her baby onto the House floor? She's like, look, it's so hard for me to be a working mom and be a member of Congress. And she brings baby onto the House floor. There's a reason that the baby is on the House floor. It's because the baby's allowed to be on the House floor. When my dad was in Congress, he brought us kids on the House floor all the time. If you're under the age of 12, I believe it's 12 years old, you are allowed to be on the House floor. So if you really can't leave your babies at the daycare, you can bring them with you to vote, which that woman just did. She just brought her little baby on the House floor and addressed Congress. And she did a beautiful job. I don't agree with what she was saying, but she did a fine job. She literally just proved I can do exactly what I'm saying I can't do with my baby on the House floor. She proved herself wrong by bringing the baby onto the House floor. And I don't know, people probably don't know this, but there's a side room off of the House floor for just women to relax and especially to breastfeed if that's what they're doing at the time. And it's to make it convenient for staffers and mothers to do their job and also to be young mothers. This whole Congress, for as demanding of a job as it is, I don't think it could be more accommodating for young mothers while still abiding by the Constitution. What job can you bring your little baby to work? Very few jobs. What job offers free childcare? Very few jobs. And again, we are litigating all of this at the expense of the agenda. And that's what really gets me mad. And Anna Paulina Luna is on X right now, and she's saying, oh, well, Mike Johnson, he didn't have to add this in there, and we deserve to have a vote on this, and it didn't need to be in this procedural vote that we had. And yeah, I mean, it didn't need to be in there, but I'm glad it was, because it's a dumb thing that you're trying to push for, Anna. I'm sorry, it's dumb. I don't care about this. I think Anna Paulina Luna is a fighter. I don't think that she's a bad woman. She's here in Florida. I'm not like, let's primary Anna Paulina Luna over this whole fiasco. Like, I'm not saying that. Some people are really angry at her. I just think this is a really bad thing that she's pushing for, and all these other 9 Republicans as well. But I'm kind of beside myself with the priorities right now when we have crunch time to enact the agenda, when we just had last night this massive blow in Wisconsin where we know that things are going to get redistricted and we're probably going to lose seats in that state. The time to enact the agenda is now, and for some reason, some members of Congress are more busy trying to make accommodations for themselves because they decided to get pregnant. And by the way, not just women, right? Also men. Men get the 12 weeks off of voting in person. It's a threat to our republic, it's unconstitutional, and it should not be litigated right now when we're in crunch time. We don't need this infighting. We don't. All right, speaking of Congress, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker delivered a speech on the Senate floor, and it lasted 24 hours, setting a new record for the longest Senate speech in U.S. history. And you think that he must have been filibustering something really important. To speak for 24 hours, it must have been a really big deal. There had to have been a grave reason for this 24-hour speech. Here's what Cory Booker wrote on X after the speech. Drop a comment and tell me if you can decipher why Cory Booker gave this speech. I may be tired and a little hoarse, but as I said again and again on the Senate floor, this is a moment where we cannot afford to be silent, when we must speak up. What's more clear to me tonight is that this is just the beginning, that Americans across this country, no matter their title or party, are ready to be heard. I believe that history will show we rose to meet this moment. It will show we did not let the chaos and division go unanswered. It will show that when our president chose to spread lies and sow fear, we chose to come together, to work together, and to rise together. Did you catch that? Did you catch why Cory Booker talked everyone's ear off for 24 hours? No? Right, because there literally was not a reason. There was not a reason. He was just like, I hate Trump. I'm going to give a speech for 24 hours about it. That was it. He accomplished nothing. It was for nothing. It's just a whole bunch of left-wing talking points that he word vomited at everyone for 24 hours. All to make it look like Democrats are doing something, because this is the key here. Democrats, the base, they're angry. They feel like their politicians are not doing anything. Chuck Schumer had to cancel his book tour because the Democrat base is so angry at him for allegedly capitulating to Trump. That's the accusation being waged against Democrat politicians right now. They're not doing enough to combat Trump. So Cory Booker decides to just do this theatrical tirade, anti-Trump tirade, for no reason whatsoever, only to appear like he's doing something to Democrat constituents. Here was a piece of his speech.
To call to the conscience of this nation to say, I will not stand for another American to lose their health care for a billionaire. I will not stand for another veteran who's dedicated to stopping the suicide of other veterans to lose their job. I won't stand for the air quality in my community to be made worse because they're letting polluters pollute more. I won't stand for the collective assaults on the Constitution by a man who even the highest judge in our land, a Republican-appointed judge, said stop threatening and bullying other branches of government. When is it going to be enough? My voice is inadequate. My efforts today are inadequate to stop what they're trying to do. But we, the people, are powerful. We are strong. We have changed history. We have bent the arc of the moral universe. And now is that moral moment again. It's the moral moment again.
He's just word vomiting grievances. It's like there's nothing there. You want to see a good filibuster? Watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That is one of my favorite movies of all time. That's a good filibuster. This doesn't compare to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. This idiocy, I think, spits on the legacy of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Again, guys, just look it up. This is how you know that you are an idiot. This is how you know you're crazy and you're an idiot. When the queen of idiots decides to praise you for something idiotic that you did. Kamala Harris wrote on X, for over 24 hours, my friend Cory Booker stood on the floor of the Senate and lifted up the voices of the American people harmed by the current administration. This is how you know you effed up. When Kamala Harris is coming in over the top and saying, yeah, you did a really great job. It's just it's pathetic. That's how I would describe this entire scenario. It's just pathetic. Somebody wrote on X, she shared the Cory Booker video, and she said, am I supposed to be impressed? The homeless guy at the gas station by my house does this every day. Like just rambling on for 24 hours, just doing a whole filibuster. Yeah, homeless person at the gas station probably can't do that. Am I supposed to be impressed by this? I hope Democrats aren't buying this. Like, I hope you guys, frankly, I really hope that they continue to be placated and lose and be losers. But if I was a Democrat, I would not take this. I would not buy this as actually doing something. It is, like I said, very pathetic. Here's the good news about what we're fighting right now. It is that these people are moronic. Seriously, they are moronic. Here was Elie Mystal on The View yesterday, left-wing activist. He wrote a book recently. He was there to promote this book about how he can fight Trump. And he was criticizing Trump's use of old laws to deport people. For instance, the Alien Enemies Act to boot out Tren de Aragua. Here is what Elie said about Trump in response to Trump using older laws to get rid of illegals in this country.
One of my premises for the book is that every law passed before the 1965 Voting Rights Act should be presumptively unconstitutional, right? But because before the 1965 Voting Rights Act, we were functionally an apartheid country. Not everybody who lived here could vote here. So why should I give about some law that some old white man passed in the 1920s, like the Immigration and Nationality Act, when they passed our fundamental...
Chat, what's wrong with that soundbite? What's wrong with the soundbite? The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land in this country. So Elie is saying we need to declare everything before 1965 against the law that was enacted before 1965. It's so retarded. It's so dumb. And let's talk about the evil white man question, right? Oh, the evil white man. We should no longer care about what those evil white men have to say before 1965, before we had this voting rights law. Before 1965, old white men abolished slavery. The old white men penned the Declaration of Independence, and they built a constitutional system that has protected more human liberty than any other in human history. They were the ones who fought and died on behalf of the Union in the Civil War. White men who gave their lives at Gettysburg. White men laid the legal and moral groundwork for every civil rights advancement that has followed. So to suggest that we discard every law or principle or institution that these old white men created just because of their skin color is not progressive. Again, it is very moronic, and it is historical vandalism. And I'm just sick of it. I'm sick. Why are we even platforming this guy? Obviously, he's an idiot. Does he not know that the Constitution is a law of the land and that it was enacted before 1965? We need to ignore every law before 1965 and declare it against the law that was passed before 1965. Like, are you